The rain had been falling since before Maya Reeves clocked in, and it had not shown any intention of stopping. It came down in sheets against the wide front windows of Clover Falls Diner, streaking the glass and blurring the streetlights outside into soft orange smears. The parking lot had a puddle the size of a small lake forming near the handicap space, and the mat by the front door was so saturated that every customer who walked in left a trail of wet footprints all the way to their booth. Maya had already mopped twice. She would mop again before the lunch rush was over. That was just Tuesday. "Order up," Gary called from the kitchen window, sliding 2 plates of the Tuesday special, meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, onto the metal shelf with a clang that cut through the noise of the diner like a bell. Maya grabbed both plates without breaking stride, balanced them with the ease of 4 years of practice, and delivered them to table 7 with a smile that she had perfected to the point that it cost her nothing. "Can I get you anything else?" The couple at 7 shook their heads. She was already turning back toward the counter before they finished the motion. The diner was full, unusually full for a rainy Tuesday, and every booth was occupied with the usual crowd. Construction workers from the site on Route 9, a table of retired men who came every Tuesday and argued about football like the season hadn't ended months ago, 2 nurses from the clinic down the street who always ordered the same thing and tipped exactly 18%. Maya knew all of them. She knew their orders, their moods, their coffee preferences. She knew which tables needed a refill before they asked, and which ones would flag her down the moment she turned her back. This was her diner. Not in the ownership sense. That belonged to Earl Hutchins, who was 63, semi-retired, and spent most Tuesdays fishing. But in every way that mattered in the day-to-day, this was Maya's floor, Maya's regulars, Maya's rhythm. She was refilling the coffee at table 4 when the phone behind the counter rang. Danny, her coworker and the closest thing she had to a best friend on this earth, was elbow-deep in a to-go order and shot Maya a look that said, "Please, I cannot do one more thing." Maya set down the coffee pot, crossed behind the counter, and picked up the receiver. "Clover Falls Diner. This is Maya." A pause. Not the uncertain kind, the deliberate kind. The kind that belonged to someone who paused on purpose to let you know they were not in a hurry, and you were. "I need a table." The voice was low, smooth, with a faint accent she couldn't immediately place. It was the kind of voice that belonged in a boardroom or a courtroom, somewhere that required people to be quiet and listen. Private. Away from the windows. Maya looked out at her fully packed dining room and the rain hammering the windows. "We don't take reservations," she said pleasantly. "But you're welcome to come in, and we'll seat you when something opens up." "I don't wait." Maya blinked. Then she smiled, because that was always her first response to something unreasonable. "Well," she said, "today might be a character-building experience for you." Silence. Then, "I'll need the table ready in 30 minutes. Tell the kitchen I don't eat processed food. Everything fresh, nothing from a can. And I'll need the adjacent tables cleared for privacy." Maya stood very still for 1 full second. "Sir," she said, her voice still even, "this is a diner in Clover Falls, not a private dining club in Manhattan. We have 1 cook, a leaking ceiling, and a Tuesday special that comes out of a can. I cannot clear adjacent tables for a stranger who calls 30 minutes ahead and doesn't say please." I'm not accustomed to repeating myself. And I'm not accustomed to being spoken to like a vending machine, so I guess today is full of new experiences for both of us. She kept her tone perfectly pleasant. "Would you like me to put your name down for when a table opens, or is there something else I can help you with?" A beat. "Then, do you know who—" "I'm going to stop you right there," Maya said, "because whatever comes after that question is not going to change my answer, and I have 4 tables waiting on me. So let me just go ahead and wish you a wonderful afternoon." She hung up. The diner went quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then Danny let out a bark of laughter from the end of the counter, and one of the construction workers at table 2 started clapping slowly. The retired men at the back looked up from their football argument long enough to grin. Maya set the receiver down, smoothed her apron, and picked up the coffee pot. "All right," she announced to no one in particular. "Let's keep it moving." And she did. She refilled coffees and delivered plates and smiled at the nurses and pretended she wasn't thinking about the voice on the other end of that phone. Low and controlled. Not angry, not exactly. More like a man who was very, very rarely made to feel small and was deciding what to do with the feeling. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself that about 4 more times over the next 14 minutes. Then Danny appeared at her elbow, wide-eyed, nodding toward the front window. "Maya," Danny said, in a voice that was very quiet for someone who is usually very loud. "You need to see this." The car was black. Not the ordinary black of a sedan that happened to be that color. This was the deliberate, polished, consume-all-light black of a vehicle that cost more than Maya made in 2 years. It sat at the curb outside the diner the way expensive things often sat in cheap places, completely unbothered by the contrast. The rain ran off it in perfect sheets. There were no plates that any of them recognized. Nobody got out for a moment. The diner had gone quiet in the way that diners do when something unusual happens outside the window. Not silent, just dimmer, conversations dropping half a register while eyes drifted toward the glass. Then the door opened. He stepped out without hurrying. He didn't pull his collar up against the rain or move faster than his natural pace. He simply walked from the car to the diner entrance, like the weather was a minor inconvenience that he had already accounted for and dismissed. He wore a dark jacket, no tie, and the kind of effortless put-together that suggested he'd never once had to think about what to wear. He was tall. That was the first thing. The second thing was the way he moved, economical, deliberate, like a man who had long ago decided that no motion would be wasted on anything that didn't require it. He pushed open the diner door and stepped inside. The little bell above the door rang, as it always did, but it felt different this time. Smaller. He looked around the diner once, a single, thorough sweep that took maybe 3 seconds and seemed to take in everything, and then he crossed the room and sat down at the table in the corner. The one away from the windows. The one Maya had specifically not reserved for him. He picked up the laminated menu and looked at it the way a person looks at something they are not really reading. Maya had not moved from her spot behind the counter. She was aware that the entire diner was now watching her with the barely concealed interest of people who had front-row seats to something they hadn't paid for. The retired men at the back had abandoned their football debate entirely. Danny was gripping a dish towel with both hands. Maya set down the coffee pot, rolled her shoulders once, and walked over. She stopped at the edge of a table. He looked up from the menu. His eyes were dark and steady, the kind of eyes that didn't dart or shift, that just landed on you and stayed there like he had all the time in the world and intended to use it. "Black coffee," he said, before she could speak. Maya looked at him for a moment. Then she pulled out her notepad. "Sure," she said. "Anything to eat?" "Not yet." She wrote nothing, because there was nothing to write, and turned to go. "You hung up on me." She stopped, turned back slowly. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite categorize, not anger, not amusement. Something in between that was more unsettling than either. "I did," she agreed. "Most people don't do that. Most people probably should." She tilted her head slightly. "I'll get your coffee." She went behind the counter, poured a black coffee, and carried it back to the table. She set it down without ceremony. He watched the whole transaction like he was studying it. "The table wasn't reserved," he said. "No," Maya said. "It wasn't. But it's the one I asked for. It's also the one that was available." She met his eyes without difficulty. Lucky coincidence. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not a smile, not quite. The precursor to one, maybe. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maya." She didn't ask for his. She capped her pen, tucked her notepad back into her apron pocket, and looked at him evenly. "Let me know when you're ready to order." She walked away. Danny intercepted her at the coffee station, grabbing her arm with a grip that suggested significant alarm. "Maya," she hissed. "Do you know who that is?" "A customer," Maya said, picking up the coffee pot. "He came in a car with no plates. Lots of people have nice cars. And he has a bodyguard standing outside the door, who I am 90% sure is armed." Maya glanced toward the entrance. There was, in fact, a large man in a dark coat standing just outside the glass door, facing the street. She had not noticed him before. She looked back at Danny. He ordered black coffee, Maya said. I'll treat him like anyone else who orders black coffee. Maya. Danny. She said it gently but firmly, the way she said Sophia's name when her daughter was working herself up over something. I have 6 tables. Can you take 3 and 4 for me while I do the side station? Danny stared at her. Then she threw up both hands. You are going to be the death of me, she announced, and went to take tables 3 and 4. Maya worked the rest of the lunch rush. She refilled the man's coffee once, without being asked, because that was her job and she was good at her job. He watched her each time she passed his table. Not in a way that made her feel followed, exactly. More in the way that someone watches something they are genuinely trying to understand. It bothered her more than she wanted it to. He left 2 hours later, when the lunch crowd had thinned and the rain had softened to a drizzle. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and left a folded bill on the table. Maya cleared it after he was gone. It was $100. For 1 black coffee. She stood there for a moment, holding it. Then she folded it in half, put it in the tip jar. She always split tips with Danny, and went to wipe down the table. His name was still a mystery. His reason for coming was still a mystery. The way her pulse had behaved every single time she walked past that table was something she was going to choose, firmly, not to examine. Not today. If you're already hooked, you're not alone. Follow Stories by Niksy for new chapters every week. Romance, danger, and heroines who always hang up first. He came back the next morning. Maya was unlocking the back door, still holding her travel mug, when she saw the black car parked across the street. She stopped. Looked at it. It looked back at her, the way only expensive things can look back at you, with absolute indifference that somehow still feels pointed. She went inside and started the coffee. He came in at 8:15, before the morning crowd hit, and sat at the same corner table. He ordered black coffee and eggs, scrambled, no salt, wheat toast, dry. Gary raised an eyebrow at the order, but made it without comment, because Gary was a man of very few opinions that he shared out loud. Maya brought the plate over. You came back, she said, setting it down. I did. Most people who get hung up on don't come back. Most people, he said, picking up his fork, haven't met you. She didn't know what to do with that, so she did what she always did with things she didn't know what to do with. She ignored it and went back to work. He came back the day after that, too. And the day after that. Always the same table, always the same order, always arriving before the rush and staying for exactly 90 minutes. He brought nothing with him, no laptop, no phone visible, no newspaper. He just sat, drank his coffee, ate whatever he ordered that morning, and watched the diner with the quiet patience of a man who had learned a long time ago how to be still in a room. He watched Maya most of all. She felt it the way you feel sun on the back of your neck, not uncomfortable, exactly, but impossible to ignore. On Thursday, Danny leaned against the counter next to her and murmured, He's done it again. Done what? The thing where he watches you like he's taking notes. Maya did not look over. He's a customer. Honey, customers look at the menu. That man is looking at you. Maya poured a coffee and said nothing. Danny made a sound that was somewhere between a sigh and a laugh, and went to attend to table 9. It was on Friday that things changed. The dinner shift ended at 10. Maya stayed late to help Gary with the stock count, which put her out the back door closer to 11 than she liked. The drizzle from the week had dried up, and the night was clear but cold. The parking lot pooled with the yellow light of 2 functioning lampposts out of the 4 that were supposed to be working. She was cutting across the lot toward her car when she heard the voice. Hey. Hey, waitress. She slowed. Turned. He was sitting on the hood of a beat-up truck parked at the edge of the lot, a man she vaguely recognized as someone who'd been nursing beers at the bar 2 doors down most of the evening. He was heavy-set, unsteady in the way that took effort to hide, and he wasn't bothering to try. Place is closed, she said evenly. Have a good night. I just want to talk. He slid off the truck and took a step toward her. Come on. You're always so friendly inside. Be friendly. Maya shifted her weight and calculated the distance to her car. 20 feet, maybe. Her keys were in her jacket pocket. Sir, I'd like you to step back. Don't be like that. He didn't finish the sentence. It happened fast, too fast for Maya to fully track. One moment the man was moving toward her, and the next moment he wasn't, because someone had him by the collar and had placed him, firmly and without apparent effort, against the side of his own truck. Not violently, there was no punch, no real force beyond the minimum required, but with a certainty that communicated very clearly that more force was available if needed. Luca Ferrante stepped back. His expression hadn't changed. He looked at the man against the truck the way he looked at everything, with flat, unhurried attention. "Go home," he said. Just that. 2 words, quiet and even. The man went. Maya watched him stumble away across the lot, then looked at Luca. He was straightening his jacket, the motion unhurried. "You were here," she said. "Yes." "It's after 11. "Yes." She stared at him. He looked back at her without apology or explanation, which was, she was beginning to understand, his default mode. "I don't need you to do that," she said. "I had it handled." "I know you did." "Then why?" "Because I was here," he said simply, "and it was faster." Maya stood in the cold parking lot and felt something in her chest do something she actively didn't want it to do. She pressed her keys in her hand until the teeth bit into her palm. "I'm driving myself home," she said. "I know." She walked to her car. She got in. She pulled out of the lot and turned onto the empty main street of Clover Falls. Her rearview mirror showed headlights a careful, deliberate distance behind her. Not close, not threatening. Just there. They stayed there until she pulled into her driveway, until her front door opened and light fell out into the dark and Sophia's small voice called, "Mama?" From inside. The headlights waited at the end of the street until the door closed. Then they were gone. Maya stood in her hallway with her jacket still on while Sophia pressed her face into her ribs, and she stared at the closed door and thought about what it meant to feel furious and safe at the exact same time. She didn't have an answer. She wasn't sure she wanted one. Danny found the name on a Saturday morning, 20 minutes before the diner opened. She came in through the back door holding her phone with both hands like it was live evidence, set it on the counter in front of Maya, and said nothing. Just watched her face. Maya looked down at the screen. The photo was from a business publication, 3 years old, formal setting, a charity event in the city. He was standing at the edge of the frame in the way people who are used to being watched stand, not quite centered, not quite removed. The caption below the photo read, "Luca Ferrante, CEO, Ferrante Group." Maya scrolled. She read about the Ferrante Group, which was a holding company with interests in real estate, logistics, and private security across 4 states. She read about Luca's father, Domenico Ferrante, who had built the family's original business in a way that the articles described with careful, deliberate vagueness. She read the phrase alleged ties in 4 separate articles, each one careful not to say directly what it was strongly implying. She read about a federal investigation 2 years ago that had been dropped. She read about a rival company whose CEO had quietly retired after what was described as a disagreement with the Ferrante Group over regional contracts. She put the phone down. "Okay," she said. Danny stared at her. "Okay? That's all you have? Okay. What would you like me to say?" "Maya, that man is—" "I can read, Danny. Potentially dangerous. Potentially. Definitely not the kind of person who just happens to wander into a diner in Clover Falls for eggs and black coffee." "No," Maya agreed. "Probably not. So, what are you going to do?" Maya looked at the door. Outside, through the front windows, the morning was gray and quiet. The street was empty. There was no black car at the curb, not yet. He usually arrived between 8:15 and 8:30. She had 40 minutes. "I'm going to open the diner," she said. "And then I'm going to talk to him." Danny opened her mouth. "Alone," Maya added. "Absolutely not, Danny." She looked at her steadily. "I need you to trust me." A long pause. Danny pressed her lips together, visibly unhappy, then pointed at Maya with one finger. "I am keeping my phone in my apron pocket with the emergency call, ready to go." "That's fine. And if anything feels wrong, then I'll tell you. Promise me." "I promise." Danny took a long breath, nodded once, and went to start the coffee. Maya turned the sign on the door from closed to open, then sat down in the corner booth, his booth, and waited. He arrived at 8:19. She heard the car. She heard the door. She heard the bell. His footsteps slowed when he saw her sitting at his table instead of behind the counter. A pause just one beat long, and then he crossed the room and stood at the edge of the booth. He looked at her. Then, reading something in her expression, he sat down across from her. The diner was empty. Danny had made herself scarce in the kitchen. Gary didn't come in until 9. Maya folded her hands on the table. "Luca Ferrante," she said. Something shifted in his face, so briefly that she almost missed it. Then it settled back into the same controlled steadiness he always wore. "Maya Reeves," he returned, equally even. "You know my name?" "Yes." "You know more than that, don't you?" It wasn't quite a question. He held her gaze and didn't deny it. "I know you've been here for years," he said. "I know you have a daughter named Sophia, 7 years old, and that she takes the school bus at 7:50 and gets off at 3:40. I know your shift schedule, your car, your landlord's name." A pause. "I know you're behind 2 months on the diner's equipment lease because Earl Hutchins is a bad businessman, and it isn't your fault." Maya felt the information land, one piece at a time, like stones dropped into still water. She did not look away. "That's a lot," she said when he finished. "Yes." "Why?" He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Because I wanted to know who you were. People usually just ask. People I know don't usually hang up on me." The corner of her mouth moved. She controlled it. She unfolded her hands and placed them flat on the table and looked at him the way she looked at everything that needed to be dealt with directly. "I'm going to say this once," she said. "So, I need you to listen." He listened. "I know who you are. I read everything I could find, and I understand what the spaces between the words mean. I'm not naive, and I'm not scared of you." She paused. "But I am a mother. And I have a life that is small and unglamorous and completely mine, and I will not have it turned into something I can't control because a man with a black car decided I was interesting." She kept her eyes on his. "So, if you're going to keep sitting at this table, you're going to tell me why, in actual words, not implications, or you're going to find another diner. Those are the terms." The silence stretched. It was the longest she had ever seen Luca Ferrante sit without speaking. She watched him. He looked at her with that dark, measuring expression that she had stopped trying to decode, and then something in it shifted. The calculation gave way to something less guarded. Something she didn't have a name for yet. And then, for the first time since he had walked into Clover Falls Diner, Luca Ferrante smiled. It was quiet, small. Nothing like the controlled performance she might have expected from a man like him. It was a real smile, the kind that arrives without permission, and it changed his entire face. "You're remarkable," he said. Simply, like a fact. Maya held his gaze and felt her heart do the thing it had been doing all week that she had been ignoring. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The conversation wasn't finished. Not by a long way, but something had been established between them that hadn't been there before. A truth. Mutual and unguarded. It was, Maya thought, a start. Drop a black heart in the comments if Maya just became your favorite character. Subscribe to Stories by Niksy so you never miss a chapter. The black SUV appeared on a Wednesday. Maya noticed it because it wasn't Luca's car. She had learned without meaning to the particular way his vehicle sat, the angle, the slight distance from the curb, the stillness of it. This car was parked differently, closer to the entrance. And it had been there since before she arrived for her morning shift, which meant it had been there before Luca. She noticed it, filed it, and went inside to start her day. The men came in at 10. There were 2 of them. They sat at table 3, which was not the corner table, and they ordered coffee and the breakfast plate, and they were polite in the way that people are polite when politeness is a tool rather than a habit. One of them had a jaw, like a shelf. The other one had eyes that moved too much, cataloging the room, the exits, the other customers, Maya herself. "You work here every day?" the first one asked when she brought their order. "Most days," she said pleasantly. "Get a lot of regulars?" This is a small town. Most customers are regulars. "Anyone interesting lately?" He smiled. It did not reach his eyes. Maya set down the coffee pot and looked at him. He looked back. Something passed between them that had nothing to do with the words they were using. "Just the usual crowd," she said. "Can I get you anything else?" She walked back to the counter. Her hands were steady. She was proud of that. Danny slid up next to her immediately. "Who are they?" "I don't know. They're not from here."
"No."
"Maya." "I know." She kept her voice low and her expression neutral, because the man with the moving eyes was still watching her. "Don't react. Just stay close." Luca arrived at 8:40, later than usual. He came through the door, scanned the room in his habitual single sweep, and found the two men at table 3 before he found Maya. She watched his face. Nothing moved in it. But he walked to the corner table slightly differently than he normally did, more directly, more deliberately, and when he sat down, he positioned his chair so his back was not to the room. Maya brought his coffee, without being asked. She set it down and kept her voice very low. "Friends of yours?" "No," he said, equally quiet. "Do they know you're here?" "That's why they're here." She straightened up. Her chest felt tight in a way she was working to keep off her face. She looked at him. Really looked, the way she had let herself start to do over the past week, and she saw something she hadn't seen in him before. Not fear. Luca Ferrante did not appear to be a man who feared things easily, but something close to resignation. The look of someone who has been carrying a weight for a long time and has just felt it shift. "How bad?" she asked. He looked up at her. "Bad enough." The two men left at 11 without incident, leaving a standard tip and no trace of anything except the particular quality of their attention, which had rested on Maya several more times than was comfortable. She watched the SUV pull out of the lot and held the coffee pot until her knuckles went white. Luca was still at his table when the last of the lunch crowd cleared. He was the only one left. Maya took off her apron, poured herself a coffee, and sat down across from him. He watched her do it. "Tell me," she said. He told her. Not everything. She had the sense there was a version of this story that would take years to fully tell. But enough. A business dispute that had become personal. A rival family that had decided a show of reach was necessary. The fact that Luca had chosen to spend time in Clover Falls was not something that had gone unnoticed, and now the town, and the diner, and the woman who worked there had become a way to send a message. When he finished, the diner was very quiet. The rain from earlier in the week had returned, softer now, tapping at the windows. "I'll leave," he said. It came out flat and certain, the way he said most things, but there was something underneath it that wasn't flat at all.
"Tonight.
I'll take what follows me away from here, and it won't touch you again." He paused. "Sophia won't be in any danger. Neither will you. You have my word on that, and whatever you think of who I am, that word means something." Maya looked at her coffee. She thought about Sophia, who that morning had announced at breakfast that she wanted a dog, a hamster, and a lizard, in that order, and had presented her case with the careful logic of a 7-year-old who had been paying attention to how arguments work. She thought about the leaking ceiling in the diner that Earl still hadn't fixed. She thought about her quiet street and her small house and the life she had built in this town with her own 2 hands. She thought about Luca sitting at that corner table every morning for a week with nothing but black coffee and a patience she had never encountered in a person before. She thought about the parking lot and the headlights at the end of her street, and a smile that had arrived without permission. She thought about what it really meant, to feel safe. She picked up her phone. It rang twice. "Yes," said Luca's voice, careful and low, like he was already prepared to hear something he didn't want to hear. "You said your word means something," Maya said. "It does." "Then I need you to promise me something. Not as whoever you are to those men, or to whatever world you come from." She kept her voice steady. "As the person who followed me home at a distance to make sure I got inside. As that person." A pause. Long and full. "Ask me," he said. "Promise me that if this gets worse, if it ever comes near Sophia, you tell me. No managing it quietly. No making decisions about my life without me. You tell me, and we figure it out." The silence stretched. She let it. "I promise," he said. Maya let out a breath she had been holding since Wednesday. She looked out the front window at the rain. "Then you don't have to leave tonight," she said. She heard something on the other end of the line that might have been an exhale. That might have been relief. from a man who, she was beginning to understand, had been holding a very great deal for a very long time. "Maya," he said. "Don't make it a thing," she said. "Come in tomorrow. I'll have Gary make something that isn't from a can." She hung up the phone. Then she sat there in the quiet diner with the rain against the windows and the coffee cooling between her hands, and she let herself smile, small and private and entirely her own. Whatever came next, she had set the terms. That, she had learned a long time ago, was the only way to start anything worth starting. The story doesn't end here. Follow Stories by Niksy for the continuation, bonus scenes, and what happens when Maya meets Luca's world head-on. Comment Black CAR if you want Chapter 6.